All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. Now, the New York football Giants came into this NFL season with high expectations, and for good reason. Last year, the Giants came out of nowhere to make the postseason for the first time since 2016, and they go on to win a playoff game for the first time since Super Bowl number 46. But this season has just gotten away from the Giants from the word go. And I mean, it's been downhill for Big Blue ever since. You go back to week number one, their opening drive of the season on Sunday Night Football at home against the Dallas Cowboys. Looked like the Giants were going to get some points, get some momentum. The blocked field goal got run back for a touchdown. Giants lost that game 40 to nothing, and it's been downhill for them ever since. You go back to week number two for the Giants, where they had to struggle, fight, scrap, and claw to come back and beat the Arizona Cardinals. And who knew that that was a harbinger of things to come this season for the Giants? They got off to that slow start, being 1-5. And it just as soon as it looked like they were going to turn the corner, as far as getting both running back Saquon Barkley and quarterback Daniel Jones back from the injuries early on this season has just taken a turn for the worse. And honestly, at this point, I don't see it getting any better for the Giants. And honestly, a lot of people, I really don't see it getting any better for the Giants. I mean, you think about it, the disaster last Sunday at home against the New York Jets. And of course, it's only gotten worse since then. The Giants, they took the field today against a Raiders team in Vegas that had just fired their head coach and Josh McDaniels. They promoted Antonio Pierce to be the interim head coach, and of course, Antonio Pierce had a previous life as a player in the NFL, first for Washington, and then with the Giants, and he was a starting linebacker for the Giants, and he was one of the catalysts actually for the Giants when they won the Super Bowl to culminate the 2007 season, which of course they upsetted the previously undefeated New England Patriots in that contest. But nonetheless, there was some optimism. The Giants were getting Jones back today from the neck injury, and it looked like they were ready to go. And the Giants, early on, Jones did miss rookie wide receiver Jalen Hyatt several times outside. And you figured, what, at some point they were going to get that timing down. But on the last play of the first quarter, we saw Jones's right knee buckle, and you figured, okay, maybe he slipped on something. Let's try to, just walk it off. He tried to walk it off between the quarters, comes back for the first play for the second quarter, and the injury got worse. And at that point, you kind of had a feeling that this wasn't going to be good. And right now for the Giants, you're trying to hold out hope if you're the Giants, but also all signs, and I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm not trying to claim to be one, but all signs point to an ACL injury for Daniel Jones, the way that that went down. So, with all of that said, it looks like the Giants are barreling towards a top five pick. And honestly, if the season finished right now, New York would be picking fourth. So you've got Arizona at number one right now. You've got Chicago at number two. You've got Chicago at number three, and then you've got the Giants at number four. And you look at it like this: the Giants are in a prime spot to go out there and take a quarterback. And I say this because I know that the Giants have tried to quote unquote do right, if you will, by Daniel Jones. And that's a lot of doing of co-owner John Mara, because John Mara has, like, he's come out publicly and said it. You know what? The Giants organization has not done right by Daniel Jones. But at the end of the day, even regardless of this injury, and it looks like it's a severe one, I don't see a scenario where the Giants can go out there and say, hey, we need to continue building or trying to build around Daniel Jones. Last year was great. Okay. And I'm not going to take anything away from Daniel Jones from that. But that was really the only year in his NFL career where he was able to stay healthy. And regardless of the sport, guys tend to find a way to stay healthy, tend to find a way to have the best years of their careers when it's contract time. And if you remember, the Giants opted not to pick up Daniel Jones's rookie option for 2022. And what did he do? He balled out. But then you provided him with a head coach in Brian Dayball that is more quarterback friendly, worked on developing him, worked on developing the offensive line. Daniel Jones had a career year. The Giants as a whole overachieved. And I think right now we're right back to square number one with Daniel Jones. And of course, you think back to this past offseason, the back and forth in the contract negotiations that ended with Daniel Jones getting 160 for 4 years from the Giants. But if you look at this contract, the Giants have an out from this deal after next season, and it won't cost them a lot of money. And for me, if I'm the Giants, again, you gotta think long and hard as far as going out there and getting a quarterback. And I'll throw out a scenario right now to anybody who's out there checking it out. The Giants right now are sitting in the fourth spot, and you look at it, it's going to be a very if this field stays in the alignment that it currently is right now. You got Arizona in front of you. You've got Chicago in front of you twice. Now, more than likely, Chicago's going to use one of those picks on a quarterback. Obviously, they're not going to use both. Arizona, what are they going to do? Are they going to go forward with Kyler Murray? Or are they going to say, you know what, we can try to find a way to get from under that deal as well, trade him and start over with a young quarterback as well. My point is this: if you're the Giants, and it would be the 20-year anniversary from the infamous Eli Manning trade with the San Diego Chargers, and of course the Chargers and Giants couldn't agree on a deal. The Giants are sitting at number 4. Of course, it ended with the Chargers selecting Eli Manning. Of course, Eli Manning did not want to be there. And then the Giants ended up taking Philip Rivers at number 4 before a deal was made later on that day to see both quarterbacks swapped. And of course, the Giants got Eli Manning, and the rest is history. My point is this: if you're the Giants and the way that things are currently positioned, do you go out there and try to replicate that and say, hey, let's go push all of our eggs or all of our chips to the middle of the table and go out there and make a play for USC quarterback Caleb Williams? Or do you simply say, hey, this is a quarterback heavy draft and we could sit back at number 4 and get our guy? Well, I'll tell you like this: if the season ended the way it is today and the Giants are picking 4th, yes, the Giants will probably get a quarterback at number 4, but they may not get the guy that they want. And if it's a scenario where your guy is there, you got to try to go out there and move heaven and earth if you feel that this quarterback is going to be the guy for your team going forward. Daniel Jones is not the guy. And honestly, I think I'm speaking for a lot of people that follow the Giants and have followed the Giants since they took Daniel Jones in the first round. Daniel Jones should have never been taken in the first round to begin with. If you go back and watch his college career at Duke, there was nothing there that showed you that he was lighting it up and he was worthy of being a first round pick, more or less a top 10 pick, like the Giants selected him. Of course, that falls into the lap of former Giants general manager Dave Gettleman, who really left Joe Shane with a mess over in the Meadowlands. But nonetheless, Daniel Jones, and I talked about this even after his career year last year, he's not going to be a guy that can elevate a team. He's not going to be a guy that can put a team on his back. And you have to put him in the perfect scenario. The Giants are not in a perfect scenario right now. They've had questions on the offensive line from week number 1. Of course, the Saquon injury. And of course, when Saquon was out, we saw how limited the Daniel Jones in his offense was. So if you're Joe Shane and you were brought in as for being a solid cap guy during your time in the front office with the Buffalo Bills, you're going to have an opportunity to possibly get from under this deal. You're going to have an opportunity to go out there and find a quarterback, a cheaper alternative at quarterback, and then you're going to have more financial wiggle room to do things at other positions. And like I said before, and I'm going to say it again right now on this particular podcast, let's not forget Daniel Jones, pardon me, Joe Shane, rather, and Brian Daboll, the Giants head coach, did not draft Daniel Jones. They inherited him. And when they took over last year, it was, you know what, let's see what this kid can do for us. And, again, Joe Shane wanted to keep Daniel Jones, but he wasn't gung ho on trying to go out there and keep Daniel Jones. It basically came down to the 11th hour before that deal got done. And again, it's a team friendly deal that the Giants can escape from after next season. So it's one of those cases where, hey, do you go out there and use a first round pick on a guy, and more than likely, you're going to have to trade Daniel Jones and probably eat some of that money because I don't see a scenario if the Giants are going to go out there and say, hey, we're going to get a quarterback next year in the first round, where Daniel Jones is like, hey, I'm going to go out there and keep the seat warm for this kid and let y'all go ahead and build around him for the future. It's not going to work like that. If the Giants do decide to go in that direction, which they should, in my opinion, you got to go out there and you got to cut bait with Daniel Jones and whoever this kid is going to be, that you would take if you were to take a quarterback in next spring's NFL draft. Then you've got to go out there and give him the opportunity to lead this team and build around him going forward. But overall, for the Giants, another bad loss. Obviously, as bad as the Raiders have looked, and the teams are going to try to find a spark when an interim head coach takes over. Of course, also when an interim general manager takes over, because the Raiders really cleaned house last week under owner Mark Davis, and of course they dominated the Giants today, 125 yards on the ground. And then again, if you're the Giants, and we kind of saw this from last week when they lost at home to the Jets, when you bring in a third string quarterback like Tommy DeVito, because again, backup quarterback Tyrod Taylor's out with a rib injury right now. And of course, they really didn't pass the ball a lot with Tommy DeVito last week. But when you're down to your third string quarterback, things ain't looking good. And at 2-7, I think that the wheels are about to fall off for the New York Giants. They've already they made a trade just prior to the deadline. They traded defensive lineman Leonard Williams to the Seattle Seahawks. They got some draft compensation back for that, but it's about to get worse. I mean, they got to go take on the Dallas Cowboys next Sunday, and Dallas, they're going to be chomping at the bit to get back on track after they just lost today to the Philadelphia Eagles. And of course, Dallas in the last couple of years, they've specialized in beating up on bad teams like the Giants. They specialized on beating up on the Giants, period. So that's not a good look for them. They got the rematch with Washington in a couple of weeks. Week number 12 is going to be very interesting for the Giants. And I say that because they're set to host the New England Patriots. Both of these teams are 2-7 right now. Both of these teams could be in line to select a quarterback in round number one next spring in the draft. So this could come down the draft positioning right here. Then you look at the last month, the month of December, if you will, for the Giants. They still got two games with the Philadelphia Eagles. Their final home, well, not that final home game, but they host the Rams in week number 7 on New Year's Eve. And then they're also at New Orleans and they host Green Bay in week number 14. So this could be a very daunting schedule for the Giants. And at 2-7 right now, if the Giants find a way to win more than 4 games, I would be thoroughly surprised. Now, for Shane and Dayball, they acknowledged that this was a rebuild when they took over last year. And honestly, like I said, the Giants simply overachieved in 2022. And right now, what we're seeing from this club is basically what we expected from them last year, but it's happening this time around. I still think, in my opinion, that Shane and Dayball are the right people to get things turned around for the Giants. It's just going to take time. They still have to work on the offensive line. More importantly, they still got to go out there and find their quarterback who they feel that they can build around and go forward with for this team. So like I said, the losses are going to continue, and even if you don't just look at the schedule, the upcoming schedule for the Giants, the fact that they got to go with Tommy DeVito right now at quarterback just lets you know all you need to know. So I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. If you're a Giants fan, you got to suck it up and see what this team is going to do next off season, especially at the draft, and see how the Giants can find a way to turn this around. But one thing's for sure, if this Daniel Jones injury is as serious as it looked, I think his days are numbered as a starting quarterback for the Giants. And at the end of the day, I'm not if this is it for his career there. I'm not going to say he's a what if because there really wasn't a lot of optimism on him at quarterback from the beginning. It was just a fact that hey, he came to the NFL being coached by the same guy in David Cutcliffe at Duke that coached Peyton Manning and, of course, coached Eli Manning, coming through that whole Manning passing academy, you name it. And the Giants front office, in my opinion, led by John Mara, thought that they were going to get an Eli Manning clone. That was never the case. Daniel Jones is okay. He's not, a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. And I think now is the time for the Giants to start over at the most important position on the field. And I'll tell you like this, there's no way if the Giants are going to finish with the top 5 pick for next year's draft that you cannot go quarterback at this point. And if you're that close to number one, there's no doubt that you got to try to at least go out there and put out a feeler and make a play to get the first overall pick and try to get Caleb Williams to come to the Big Apple. But at the end of the day, the Jones injury today kind of summed up this Giants season. It's gotten worse. And honestly, at least here for 2023, there doesn't appear to be an end in sight for Big Blue. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.